How's it going?
Everything's good.
For you
How
guys?
are you?
Good, yeah. Just adjusting back to the cold that is here in New York. After, are we missing it? I think we're missing Bryce right now, right?
Yeah, and Hubert from L2Beat.
All right, cool. I think we can wait a minute or two. How are your holidays? How have you guys been?
I'll go first. I've been well. I had a bit of a foot injury over the holiday, which led to the first week coming back, basically being unable to walk, but now things are better. I had a compressed nerve.
Oh no, I hope you feel better.
I feel better now. Last week was tough.
Yeah,
That's annoying.
foot injuries are not fun.
That's annoying to have that over the holidays.
Yes. It was on New Year's Day when it happened.
Should I assume you had a really great while on New Year's
Everything was great up until then. Exactly.
The
same thing happened to me last year. I had a bruised rib on New Year's Day as well.
Oh no.
Better luck next year then.
Recurring theme. Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe you should stay in bed.
Exactly.
What about you, Toby? How was your New Year's Eve? Or just holidays?
I was back in the cold in Germany. Normally I try to avoid winter, to be honest. But this year I'm back with parents and family. It was also my grandma's 90th birthday, so that's why it was pretty. It was a huge family celebration, let's say, and it was minus 10 degrees Celsius in Germany. So yeah, and snow in the end. So it was pretty good.
Happy birthday to her. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, she's really well. Like, I hope I walk like that when I'm 90. So
Nice. How was your holiday, Michelle?
It was good. I was back with my family and my parents and stuff, so that was really nice and got to enjoy what I consider warm weather now, but it's like winters in Dubai, so that was really nice. And then I went to, it was supposed to be holiday period, but I did end up going to Solana Breakpoint, and I'm going to be writing an article about that as well.
That's not a holiday.
That part wasn't. But the rest of it was great. I got to show Azim desert barbecues, which we do a lot in the winters, and then just a lot of just desert outings, which is really nice. And we got my, I think the highlight of the whole trip was we rescued a kitten, and my mom's been afraid of cats her whole life, and she now considers this little boy her little baby and the newest addition to her kids. And so that to me was and is still the highlight. I still can't believe that she loves him so much, and he's the most friendly cat I've ever met, but that was so great.
That's one of the hardest conversions possible, turning someone who doesn't like cats into someone who likes cats.
She used to scream and yell if she saw a cat on the road. She was genuinely afraid. My whole life I've seen this woman just reject cats, and then somehow this guy he's also so friendly. He's the sweetest boy ever, but I was so nervous because I thought, okay, this might work, but who knows? And so yeah, I'm so happy about that.
Nice.
Nico, how are your holidays?
Good. Back home, also just enjoying a lot of time with the family. Just a lot of food, great food, and just fun with old high school friends, which is always good to see. So yeah, it was fun, and a couple of small day trips here in Bolivia. It's always so beautiful. If I show you out of my window, I don't know if you see it, but from all over the city, you see the mountains.
That is beautiful. I got to show Azim the mountainside of the country this time because he'd only been to Dubai, and then we went to this area called Horfakan, which is like mountains and the beach, and it's really nice. It's like 2 hours away from where we live, and I got to enjoy his beach experience too, which is nice. Yeah, I mean, I think we should probably get started. We can wait for Bryce and Hubert, but we
Let's do
can
that.
kick it off. Cool. So welcome, everyone. Great to see you all. Thank you for making time. It's been a fun epoch. We're like halfway through. And a reminder for anyone who has not allocated, go allocate. We're going to be coming up to the final days very soon. And yeah, it's been fun to see and very unexpected results this time. I don't know what to I don't know what's going to happen by the end of the epoch because every day I'm like, wow, this is not what I thought the rankings would be. So always fun to watch people allocate. But let's start with some recaps. 2025 was of course a big year, both for Grow the Pie and for Open Source Observer too, and we've really seen a lot of recognition, visibility, a lot of work and case studies too, and a lot of public references to data and analytics from both of your platforms. So I just want to start with a recap. How was 2025 for you? And tell us more about how was growing your team? How was growing just as a whole as a project? Let's start with you, Toby, and then we'll go over to you, Carl.
Sure. 2025 has been unexpected, I would say, but also like in a good way, and also in like with challenges, let's say. But the beginning of the year, I mean, we also like first of all, I'd say we really benefited from good Octant epochs, so that helped us a lot, kind of grow and sustain the team as well, as an open source platform, and really adding features, growing the platform in terms of new chains and more metrics around that, more meaningful metrics, let's say, where we could more explore, okay, what does the community really need in terms of bringing transparency to Ethereum, and really kind of showing the ecosystem as a whole. And for us, it was a huge shift from back when we started as a layer 2 analytics platform into becoming like this Ethereum ecosystem analytics platform, basically. So we added more Ethereum mainnet metrics, because obviously there was this shift around, okay, Ethereum mainnet itself needs to do something to stay relevant and to really show, look, it is very important to kind of grow the L1 as well, and not just all the L2s. The L2s are obviously very beneficial, but really kind of showing, look, Ethereum as a whole is there, and it can show a lot of useful apps, has a lot of usage that shifts from L1 to L2. But we just wanted also to show that it's a good relationship between these two parts, basically, like L1, L2, and that the actual roadmap that Ethereum Foundation set out really works. So there's specialized L2s, but also people can interact on L1, and there is so many kind of big or like useful apps on L1 as well, like just looking at Aave, for example, right, becoming, I don't know, like it's now amongst basically the 50th or 50 biggest banks in the world in a way, if you could just look at the total value locked, what they have, which is crazy, right? And that's what we also set out to do, kind of showing that as a whole, and not just as separate pieces, and not just saying, look, there's this L2 and this L2. And obviously for us, it was also a shift more from infrastructure to applications, really showing what people can actually use in the Ethereum ecosystem, because essentially that's what we want, right? We don't just want to talk about technology and that all this tech is cool stuff, and we're all coding. But essentially, we want to show, look, what can other people, like people that are not coding, also use in the ecosystem. So I think, yeah. And one thing before maybe giving it to Carl, we built the Open Labels Initiative quite a lot, so that helps us, to really label smart contracts and allowing these application metrics that we have. And it's so nice to see you to really collaborate with Carl and Raymond and all the whole team at the OSO. So I think this is nice to really see that we as a community also help each other out and try to help each other grow. So I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. We love seeing the collaboration and just, I think that's also just part of the Ethereum spirit, right? Which is just working together, collaborating, a very positive sum attitude where everybody wins. And we've loved seeing that just obviously and on our timelines and just hearing more about that too. And it's been really cool to see also just like the growth of the platform. I mean, every time I see people share screenshots on Twitter, I love it because I'm like, yay, this is great. I love, I love seeing more usage and just people. I think even like storytelling elements that are backed by data. I think now more than ever, especially as we see, I'm not going to name certain projects, but definitely biased takes around metrics on, like just even international news and whatnot, right? And using that for their own narratives. It's so important to have neutral platforms where you can reference and understand what's happening. So that's been great to see. Carl, what about you? How have things been in 2025? Tell us more about how was last year for you all, and tell us more about the growth and everything else that came with it.
Yeah, well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be back on another one of these, and great to be back another Octant Epoch. As Toby said, Octant has been a really, really critical pillar for funding us and for funding a variety of other projects. And we are so grateful for the support that we got from you and from the community in 2025. It has literally been the difference between surviving and maybe not surviving. I think 2025 was a particularly tough year for a lot of public goods projects, ones that are reliant on grants from the Ethereum community. I think that projects like Grow the Pie and hopefully OSO, I know L2B and EAS, who are hopefully joining us on the stream, are kind of the exception rather than the norm. What we saw in 2025, and we can get into some of the data around this, is that there was a lot of projects that weren't able to make it through the past year or two, just because the amount of public good funding that has been previously available has essentially dried up, or it's become much more difficult to get. So funding sources like Octant are especially critical for supporting what we believe are the long-term committed teams that are building and want to go beyond just 1 or 2 market cycles. So thank you for that. We're grateful for the support. As a bit of an introduction, again, my name is Carl, working on Open Source Observer. One of the changes that we made in 2025 was to shorten our name just to OSO, because people said Open Source Observer was too many syllables. So our website is now oso.xyz. Our old website, opensource.observer, redirects to that. But we've tried to make things more succinct and easier for people to remember, hopefully. Our goal is the same, though. We are still building tools to measure impact on open source and in digital public goods. I would say the main transition that we had in 2025 was working with a few partners in the Ethereum ecosystem, like Optimism and Deep Funding and others, to create very, very specific types of funding. It could be algorithms or it could be ways of funding things, to trying to build a much more general purpose data platform. And what that looks like is that we think that right now there's a lot of collaboration around code. There's a lot of collaboration around, say, using AI agents to improve workflows. We don't see the same kind of collaboration happening on the data side. And we imagine a world where the time it takes to create some kind of insight, answer a question, put together a dashboard, but a front end on top of that underlying data set should be dramatically faster. So we've been investing not only in trying to create clean data sets that we can maintain, but also trying to really accelerate the data scientist or the analyst workflow, getting things that might take a week down to a few hours, and the role of the analyst from doing everything from the kind of scoping and the testing and the iteration to ideally reviewing a set of agent data scientists that are automating the hard stuff for them, and they can focus their effort really on quality control and making sure that the narrative shines through. In the last month or so, we've had some pretty big breakthroughs on that side. I could show some examples if we want to turn it over, but it's been a pretty pivotal year. Again, there were some lows where we thought, are we even going to stick with this? And some real highs where we were able to reap the benefits of some of the automations that we did, and things that used to take days now being possible in hours. We're quite excited about that. I guess just the last thing I'll say around some of the trends that we're seeing, we are looking at all sorts of different data points around adoption of developer tools and growth in developer activity. We have a pretty interesting project right now with the Ethereum Foundation taking over the Electric Capital developer report data set. So they are no longer going to be producing those reports. So we're working together with the EF on a updated version for 2026. The main focus being, we're not just going to count repos and commits and developers in the way that we used to, but we actually want to provide tools so people can go much deeper and understand what's true about the most successful projects. What does their developer onboarding look like? What do the developers that come through, how are they retained? If they've moved on, what are they doing now? If we want to create scripts or automations for people to add projects on a continuous basis to their ecosystem, how might we do that? So the goal is really transitioning from a relatively closed data set to one where the community can not only access, but ideally extend and power their own analyses on top of it. So that's one thing of many that we're quite excited about for 2026.
That's going to be super exciting. And I mean, just something that you said here really caught my eye, which is, I think it's a question we try to answer and we often don't have answers to, which is post onboarding, what happens to builders, reasons behind why they drop off, what they transition into, because I think if we can unlock a lot of these, there's a lot more answers that we will have, even around thinking through longevity, sustainability, and even thinking more deeply on a longer term basis around how ecosystems can thrive, right? Just given how much funding goes into hackathons and how much we collectively, I saw a sponsorship deck yesterday for an event in New York, and I'm going to be looking at who sponsors these, because $500,000 is not like, sorry, my brain was blown away. I was just like, who is paying this amount? I know projects are. So anyway.
Well, let me just stop you right there, because I think that both Grow the Pie and OSO have our origins in some long shot hackathon idea. Isn't that right, Toby?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, we expanded at least some of the feature set in hackathons, like on the Arbitrum governance hack, for example. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I also see, like when I've been judging at a couple of ETH Global hackathons, and you always see like that there's so many projects also coming out of that, and really teams that want to kind of continue after that. But as you also said, like they need the right support. That's what I also always say. Like we always think like, okay, as Grow the Pie, how can we actually do that? Really support the builders to actually kind of maintain or like bring this initial project from this weekend basically like further down the line and really get publicity for that as well. So I think that's where we actually need to do more work. So if you want to have some of my takes, basically is like after these hackathons there needs to be more support to like really
100% support layers for projects to figure out what to do next. But Carl, I don't mean I'm anti-hackathon. I mean sponsorship costs are crazy. Like these numbers are blowing my mind. For projects who don't have budgets, like your only other option is you just do your own thing, which is what we did. We run virtual hackathons, you do what you can. But a lot of these numbers have just had me thinking, wow, is this a bear like this is very maybe bull market pricing, but still. Anyway, if you have $500,000 and you're sponsoring these events, please get in touch. Maybe we can co-organize.
Feel free to reach out to us as well.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us. But going back to a lot of these data sets, so can the community get access to these? If someone's interested and wants to learn more, like how do they get access and how can they engage?
I can take that question first. I would say that what is really powerful about Ethereum and many projects, including some of the ones that are going to be on today's live stream, I'll use Grow the Pie as the example, is that they have actually just by default made all of their data publicly accessible. So right now, and for quite some time, we have been grabbing data that Grow the Pie curates and maintain. That includes Open Labels Initiative. That includes the incredible stats that they are collecting on every layer 2 and exposing through their front end. We have been indexing that data as well, and we make it available. Also, it's really accessible for anyone who wants to get it directly from BigQuery. They can obviously get it directly from the source as well if they want to maintain their own crawlers. We also have our own pipeline that we run, which you can access, and I can share some links as well. And the goal is really to make it so that people can not only get access to the raw data, but ultimately start sharing ways of unifying or layering different data sets together. If anyone has actually tried to, and I know that Toby does this a lot, but for others who might be listening, it's non-trivial to take something which might seem very easy, like here's a list of layer 2s. Let me look at the TVS as calculated by Grow the Pie and the the active addresses as measured by Grow the Pie. How do I actually combine those two data sets? And what you'll quickly see is that they might have slightly different ways of referring to the same chains, or they might have slightly different ways of handling date times and things like that. So a lot of the actual work that's happening behind the scenes is simple transformations so that those two data sets can work together. We have a lot of models that try and do that, literally just taking two different data sets and combining them in some way. All those models are open. If you don't want to pay for running these models and fetching the data on a regular basis, we also have production versions that you can grab. Again, I can share docs for people that want to do that. Because we are putting so much data available in one place, we have a pretty generous free tier, but we do have a rate limit because people were just scraping it, and it was very expensive. And I don't think that's good use of funders like Octant's money to pay for random data scraping.
I think that's just adding on to that. Like, I think that's what the cost that most people don't see, the costs around data. I mean, yeah, we have like the good thing in blockchain is that we have this data like available and transparent. But as you said, like you have to kind of clean it and kind of make it comparable. And then you also, in order for us to aggregate certain metrics, or for example, our landing page chart with just the weekly engagement, what we call it, which is basically like the weekly active addresses across all chains, we need the history of all the chains, basically to say that to not double count actually wallets that interact on different chains, so that we say really that wallet is now active on, I don't know, Optimism, Arbitrum 1, etc., but not active on others, and that is a huge data load that would then also need to index, store, and that is a huge cost as well. And obviously, if we have the free APIs, and that right now we're not really kind of introduced API keys and so on. But yeah, like at some point, if the usage gets too high, we also kind of have to think about different ways to actually keep our costs low, because yeah, it's just a business decision in the end, and it's a make or break for us as a project as well. I see Bryce just joined.
Absolutely. And just hi Bryce, welcome. I think you're muted. Wait, can you guys hear him?
No, it seems there's maybe like a different microphone that's connected. Can you try again?
Yeah, is this better?
Oh, this is great.
Much better.
Nice. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Nice to see you all.
Great to see you too. We're just gonna put you in the hot seat immediately and ask you introduce yourself. Tell us more about Ethereum attestation services, and tell us more about how 2025 was for you all.
Well, hey everyone. So a lot of familiar faces on the tiles here, but for those listening in, so my name's Bryce. I'm one of the founding team members of EAS. So EAS is simply a way to structure and sign data to make attestations about things. So it's a way to say, I attest X is valid. And then once you're able to do that, and if you do that cryptographically, it allows other people, machines, contracts, agents, anything to be able to rely on that data, knowing that it was authentically signed by that other entity. So if you trust who the attester is, then you can trust presumably you can trust the data and then act on it. It's been a missing kind of substrate or primitive in the Ethereum ecosystem for a long time. So we were aiming to build it about 3 years ago now to allow anyone to be able to structure and sign data. Happy to go into more of like what it is if it's helpful, but essentially it's a public good for building more trust online. And then your question about 2025. So 2025 was, I think it was interesting just in general, just like watching the overall ecosystem evolve. I'm not sure what discussions you guys talked about, but as a public good, you know, the reality is it can be really hard to continue to push kind of the boundaries, and like there's a lot of influx, and like there's certain programs that keep us obviously sustained and motivated. Things like Octant, right? Like the continued innovation around Octant and the new voting protocols, seeing builders, you know, like grow the pie, and obviously open source observer, you know, continuing to push. But I think last year was honestly tough for public goods. Like just asking around, I think it was really hard for a lot of public good builders to continue to fight the good fight. But despite all the challenges, we were able to make a lot of progress. So we've had over like 9 million attestations made so far by nearly like 500,000 unique attesters. Now, I wouldn't say those are all like unique humans, but from a total like vanity perspective, we're excited to see the numbers continue to grow. And there's some like repeat attesters like Coinbase. There's newer innovations like smaller hackers building. And that's always really encouraging to see. And then we're also getting like a lot of like unique external interest, reaching out from like channels that don't seem traditional, like LinkedIn, and channels just like through connections saying like, hey, we have this like attestation use case, some larger enterprises like exploring like what does it actually mean to move information on chain. And so last year was really about trying to figure out like what can we do to help further steward some of those relationships. We launched the SDK V2 version, which was kind of a revamp for the existing SDK. And this year we're really focused. Are we talking about this year yet? Okay. This year,
Yeah,
there's some low-hanging fruit things that we want to get just shored up. I think our narrative has changed over the last 3 years, and like our documentation just needs to kind of meet the standards of like other external teams. So like in crypto and in you know the on-chain world, our language can make a lot of sense, but then when you start exposing these types of like primitives to people outside of blockchain, there's like several layers that you have to break through. You know, there's like, number one, what type of blockchain project is this? And like, what is sometimes, you know, what is blockchain? But then as you start getting down into the technical details, like, you know, even smart contracts aren't as familiar with people, even very talented engineers. So trying to figure out like, how do we explain our primitive in a way that resonates with those that aren't familiar with these types of tools and technologies, and that still kind of meets the, you know, fastest path to value for devs that are in the space. So we've been exploring that, and then we've been working on a lot of new designs for kind of like an Explorer refresh for the Attestation Explorer, and hopefully to try to bring the kind of developer experience a little bit more closer together and just easier for builders to build with attestations and kind of see their creations a little bit faster.
Love that. Thank you, Bryce. And 9 million attestations is a lot. I'm curious, and maybe this question is going to help us transition to what I wanted to ask you all is what are the majority of those attestations about? Like, are there any interesting insights about the Ethereum world coming from those attestations? And yeah, maybe some signals of things that are going well on Ethereum there?
From a total attestation perspective, well, the open source, the open labels initiative actually has been making quite a few. So kudos there. But like Coinbase has made nearly, I think, a million attestations, and they're attesting to verified accounts. That way, those accounts can gain access to certain like areas of different apps, or like gain rewards, or prove kind of that their address isn't a bot, and it's compliant. And so those attestations have been proven to be pretty useful. I think one catch is like the attestation count isn't typically a good indicator of the attestation quality, because you can easily go to, you could make a million attestations tomorrow if you wanted to, but like if no one really trusts the attester, then the attestation doesn't matter. So as fun as like the 9 million is, like we recently wrote a little script to start to discover like what types of schemas are being registered, and like to semantically understand like, are there any unique trends? And we're seeing some unique things like around like authenticity of products starting to pick up. And then we're hoping to start seeing more things like receipts pop up around potentially X402. So like when someone actually buys something with X402, can you actually attest a receipt from that information? But it's really like the kind of the micro usage that where you're going to find more of the signal from the attestations. And if you look at the schemas that are registered, you can kind of infer what types of products people are exploring. But from a total quantity perspective, I think Coinbase still holds the crown for most useful and most made attestations, but might not always be the best indicator of the types of things people are building.
Got it. Thank you, Bryce. Pretty interesting. What about Grow the Pie? What are some of the more interesting metrics that you can see on the platform, and maybe let's focus especially on what's going well on Ethereum based on those metrics?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, as I already mentioned, since we also cover much more Ethereum mainnet metrics now, we just see that, also scaling the L1 works. I think even yesterday we hit a new all-time high in like transaction count on Ethereum mainnet, so which is a good sign, right? Everyone wanted to now also scale L1, and it seems to be working through many different upgrades, right? We released one of our quick bytes, for example, that's around the Fusaka upgrade, like upgrade our peer DAS and like blobs. And we just see, usage on L1 also now gets cheaper, and it makes it just more available to so many more users, right? I mean, we all probably know that the times when, I don't know, you got an airdrop or ENS airdrop, for example, and then you paid like, I don't know, $200 for actually, claiming it or whatever, or swapping something. And these days are kind of gone, right? Even on L1. We had L2 for that, and we have L2 for that, which, like, every L2 is building out their own kind of niche, and they have to, which is probably one of the things that I would say we need to improve in 2026. That they actually have their niche. But I think it's kind of slowly becoming more and more clear who actually already kind of built a user base, and who kind of needs to really double down on really having like a unique selling point, or like getting a community that focuses around a specific area, right? So if we look at one of the, let's say, our ecosystem page where we have real-time metrics, where we just show the transactions per second. I know that like transactions per second, for many different reasons, is not the most ideal metric, obviously, but it kind of, for us, allowed us to just show, okay, what's happening in this current moment in the ecosystem, especially that other L1s used to actually kind of sell their chain a lot with that, and now shifted away. but now we decided, look, we aggregate all the TPS in real time for all the L1 and L2s that we have listed basically, and can show, look, there was actually an all-time high, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago of 58,000 TPS, a lot driven by Lighter as an L2, like perpetual trading platform that obviously needs these high TPS, but is also optimized for it. So I think that just shows that this is going well, that there's now really optimized L2s that are basically just app chains, right? Like what we saw back then in the Cosmos days, that was built all around this primitive. And that also works now in Ethereum. And we can just show anyone can build whatever they want to build. And they also kind of then have users that actually make use of this infrastructure that they built. So I think that's a nice thing to see.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think there was a lot of discussion and skepticism around that L1 versus L2 scaling roadmap. And well, the data, I guess, is speaking for itself, that I guess both things are compatible, which is, I guess, the third and better option of those. And yeah, super cool stuff. Thank you, Toby. What about you, Carl? What are some optimistic metrics that you've seen for the Ethereum world?
So we have this hypothesis, and I keep saying it's a hypothesis. I just actually need to test if it's true or not. But we think that, well, let me give it a bit more context. So it's pretty obvious right now that when the token price goes up, a lot of new developers and teams are going to come and pay attention to crypto. We've seen that during different bull market cycles. When they think there's an airdrop, a lot of people come in, do something. But we have a related hypothesis, which is that we think that developer retention or builder retention is a good long-term predictor of token price. So basically, the flywheel would be interesting network, people come and build useful things, activity goes up, and people stick around, and in doing so, that creates more value for the network, which shows up in the token price. Nice theory. Does it actually hold up in practice? We're not sure. But what we definitely believe, and we can see in the data, is that Ethereum and layer 2s in particular have had difficulty retaining developers. And this could be because there's always a new shiny alt layer 1 or layer 2 or cash that might be there, and so people are not very loyal. It could be, as Toby and Bryce mentioned, that the funding is not reliable enough, and so you actually are not able to build a sustainable business unless you either have a large amount of venture capital funding or are going to be grant farming or hunting different types of grants. But what you do see is that projects that have been very successful, one, not surprising, is that they have a lot of developers that are sticking around and continuing to build things and iterate. And so, yeah, we actually want to test this with data. I think there's been a narrative that perhaps Ethereum has lost developers to Solana or to other alternative layer 1s. We want to see if that is the case. I think that right now, coming back to the question of good news, 2025 was a up year in terms of developer growth for Ethereum. You see that clearly in the data. And I think what we're also starting to see is that it becomes a lot easier to identify what are some meaningful signals of either retention or identifying developers that are likely to stick around and keep building. Things like hackathons, things like targeted builder support, educational programs like Speedrun Ethereum have actually been making a difference. And you can see that show up 1 or 2 years later when developers are building useful things and you ask, how did you get your start? What did you turn to for your first funding or your first resources? And a lot of them point back to a few of these places. So yeah, we think that there's a need to ensure that developers want to build on Ethereum. That's their first choice, that they have the right tooling, the right community support necessary to get going, and they don't give up because it's too hard or it's not documented or it's too hard to find users, etc.
Very cool. Yeah, looking forward to seeing those hypotheses tested, and please share with us when the results are out. And now let's ask maybe sort of the opposite question. What based on the same metrics from all your platforms, what do you think, or missing data that you need more or would like to see more? Like what needs improvement in the Ethereum world? What is maybe not going so well there? Bryce, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I think one thing that would be great is just more adoption of open primitives like Open Labels Initiative, where we can have a lot of data, but if we can start to actually, name it something and to semantically derive some like meaning from it, I think that's helpful. Now, for some of the other stuff like developer adoption and like retention of these people, I think those are always useful insights. But I guess it just really depends on like what's the overall utility that these builders are bringing. And maybe it is touching on, Carl, your long-term point. Like you can bring someone in on a hackathon, but then really do we see their value like 2 years post like their first exposure? And like the developer wars between like different chains, I think is totally healthy, because you actually want to encourage developers to go get experience from other areas so they really understand like the protocols and primitives better. I will say that a lot of developers, they might be focusing on like jumping over to a different chain because they see like, hey, this chain, just like, AWS is going to give you credits for your like server bill. They're like, hey, well, I don't really care if it's slower or worse, or there's no one there, they're going to pay me like some money to go there. And so what the mental shift that I think is really needed is like developers actually building on chains for, that 2 to 3 year like outlook, and like really trying to make sure that they're actually building in a place that has the ecosystem support that they'd expect to actually feel like they're winning. But yeah, I know your question was about metrics, but just thinking through, it's hard to really.
Can I just add something to that? Because I totally agree. I think that ultimately, why build on this chain? Why build anywhere? It should come down to the developer experience, the tooling that's there. It should come down to there being some compelling value proposition, like you're going to be able to get access to users or liquidity or other primitives that you can compose with.
Yeah.
All of those things have to be very, very clear. And it can't just be, I think far too long people have built because, like maybe there'll be users a year from now, or maybe there'll be grants and I will just kind of chase the grants. Those are obviously not good motivating factors. The ones you should care about are, is it easy to build here? And can I get some advantage in terms of users or liquidity or other things that are important to me?
From the data question, Nico, I think what would be amazing to see is, so once we start like labeling data better, just the data that we already have, and so we can reliably use that data, or at least make decisions with that data quicker and more insightfully, using Open Labels Initiative and obviously Open Source Observer to like have better insights. I think what would be awesome just from an attestation perspective is there's still so much low-hanging fruit for people just to attest to things and to like, structure and attest to data. So anytime someone's saying like, hey, I want to go on chain, it's like, okay, well, like, what are they actually thinking about when they're moving their business, their product, their idea onto the Ethereum network and like the related chains? Are they just thinking about like transactions? Like, is that how they view the chain, as like a ledger for transaction, like, financial transaction data? Or are they thinking, hey, maybe this is a way where I can prove authenticity and data around other attributes of things like, semantic data about and structured data about, reputation systems, for, I don't know, if they're building like an agent network, how are they thinking about like agent reputations? Or if they're building, some sort of provenance protocol and they're like, hey, I really want to be able to prove that, my photo is like authentic. Like, how are they thinking about actually approaching and like communicating some of that information on a blockchain? And there's a lot of different flavors and ways to do that, but I think encouraging teams to explore more than just like the next hype around stable coins and transaction data will actually unlock like some of the original, cryptographic like benefits of actually using a blockchain.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Love the discussion there. What do you think, Toby? What have you seen from your own experience and the data that you're managing? How's that looking?
I can only add to what Bryce also said in terms of, better labeling will help us understand this world much better, and will also help builders understand what's actually not there yet. That's where we want to get to, actually, where we think a lot about, look, how can we assist actually to really show like developers, builders, entrepreneurs that want to come into this ecosystem or the industry in general, what is not there yet. Because if everyone's just keeps continuing, like, I know what we saw obviously, like, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, where everyone forked just another protocol and kind of put another UI or color or name on it. We still see in the when you go to the block space analytics that we have, you still see that most of it is focused around finance. That's where most of the traction right now is, which is obviously also good, right? We kind of just show right now probably product market fit is around stable coins, probably also some lending protocols, some DEXs and so on, but obviously that will not continue, because there we already see a consolidation, right, where like the biggest ones just have the trust, like Aave, they have the trust that they haven't been hacked. People can put their money into that. And that's why they see these huge numbers, or like Uniswap, right, where like it's just the most trusted DEX and so on. So what I would love to see is that we actually explore totally different use cases. Again, like I know we've been actually probably from the beginning of like Bitcoin or like Ethereum, we've been saying, yeah, there is stuff out there, and we will find these projects, but so far we haven't found that many. And I'd love to actually see that and kind of support builders in kind of really exploring that, and then like supporting that through data, obviously. Because if you actually, as a builder, use more a more data-driven approach, you will then be able to build an innovative product much faster and much more reliably, because you don't just say, look, that's cool, and I built that for myself, and I built that because I can vibe code it, or like I can code it right now. But you actually can prove, look, it hasn't been there, but there is some indication that will be successful on this chain, and it has not yet been built. So I hope actually to see that in like this year as well. And on top of that, with better UX, with actual good UX, because I hear a lot in the industry that we say, yeah, we already have better UX, we already have good UX. I mean, my background is in product design, and I sometimes feel like, no, it's not. Like, whenever I try to still like onboard someone, even like my best friend from school, I used to have a startup with him, and I really, he studied computer science, and he really doesn't really understand how we use crypto apps or even Aave and so on.
Right.
So that just is a sign to me, look, it's still too difficult, and I hope that will change as well this year in a way.
Yeah, if we want to truly grow the pie, we need to really help improve the activation of newer people into the space in all angles, because our pie is quite small still. If you zoom out, it feels big when you're in it, but when you're out of the fishbowl, you're really trying to figure out, how do we actually get more people into the space?
Totally. Yeah, something that I always say, I agree that the UX, I mean, I think we've seen quite some improvements, but still way to go, right? But I think one of the things that are like really overlooked is, and as you said, like the vast majority of the products in our space are financial. And if you look at the adoption of, in general, financial products, even outside of Web3, it's quite hard because of how low financial literacy is. Like, people are afraid of interacting with financial products. So I think we need to overcome that barrier as well, and maybe even first, before we try to improve the UX in general. But that's, I guess, like a whole different discussion we can spend hours on.
Just one more thing on that, like what we see with Seller, for example, right? It's great what they do with MiniPay, for example. So that there's so much usage around that. So I think I love that as well, and that like stable coins are so successful. But yeah, I just hope that this will not be the only product market fit we found, right? That we kind of improved the financial rails a bit. But yeah, it's definitely great what we already have. So don't get me wrong on that.
I think what we'll start
Totally.
seeing is we'll start seeing more adjacent use cases to stablecoin usage and adoption. So like as more assets come on chain through like RWAs, you're going to start to see more information data projects around like facilitating the I guess the safety, the usefulness of these RWA type products. So like there could be more, maybe there's RWA reputation based things. There's authenticity protocols for like verifying whether or not an RWA is like valid, or like how smart contracts interact with them, which are all ripe for attested data and properly labeled and understood data.
For sure. Yeah, maybe that's the way to find non-financial use cases that are easier to adopt and then grow from there. We'll see what 2026 brings us. But we're only 5 minutes before we reach the time to close. So I wanted to maybe sort of ask a final question to you, and you can use it also to say some final words. And that is, what would you use the funding that you're gonna get in Epoch 10? Like, what are some of the most impactful things that your project needs that will benefit from the funding? And yeah, just say some words to wrap up. Toby, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, like we're doubling down on applications. So we just want to make sure that people have a complete overview in the Ethereum ecosystem, what's out there, and to discover it. Because that's another issue that's why we're there, to bring more transparency to the space. And I think we can also do it much better in terms of not separating by the chains, but just showing, look, there is specific type of applications that users can use, that builders have built, should build, and that will be a lot of our work to kind of bring much more valuable metrics to the platform, and really kind of getting builders to use this data-driven approach as well, as we really believe it's really beneficial to them, be it in hackathons, be it whenever they build their own team. And the funding will definitely go there, that we just like, first of all, bring these metrics much more to the platform, but then obviously also that we actually approach builders to show them how this can be used, and how they can also get exposure with that to their own customer base in the end, because they can also use it essentially as through our platform with these network effects, that they actually say, look, I built a unique app that's really usable, that's beneficial to someone, and just look at the metrics, which then brings in more users, because we all know if someone uses a specific app, it's more likely that if your friends use it, that you're also going to use it. And also you can much more show that to to get new funding, to really show you have traction, and that there is some usage around your application and some need around that. So yeah, that's one of our goals, definitely for this year, and with the funding obviously that we receive. And we're really already grateful for the allocations that we got. And as I said, like, Octant has been a really integral part to our growth, and to really be and stay a public good and open project.
Nice. Thank you, Toby. Carl, what about you?
Great. I'm really excited to hear from Grow the Pie that they want to focus on application analytics. I agree. It's really important. It's been underserved. I think connecting that to one of the things that the Bryce mentioned around being able to, take new protocols like X402 and get greater context on what type of payment or transaction is happening. I think there's this whole open space around trying to measure on-chain GDP in a much more nuanced way. Right now, you can just look at TVL, but TVL is not the same thing as GDP. GDP is some measurement of velocity and the type of activity that is happening. And so understanding, is this transaction here, is that payroll going out? Is that paying expenses? Is that effectively purchasing some useful service from another application? All of those things are different. And I think if we want to see many more use cases come on chain, being able to show, here's how business creates revenue, and here's what a on-chain P&L might look like, is going to require having a much better understanding of what actions are, revenue, expense, all that type of stuff. So really excited about that. And obviously Attestations would be a great interface for doing that. In terms of 2026 and what we are looking forward to, we are just trying to expand the platform, as I mentioned earlier, where we're trying to generalize so that we're not just looking at a niche set of use cases, but trying to make it so that anybody who has hard questions they want to answer can dramatically accelerate their time to insight. We are a small team. We've been entirely bootstrapped at this point in time. So any funding that we get from Octant and other sources allows us to keep the team going. You can see over the past 2 years or so, we've been very, very steady. We're constantly shipping, we're constantly working, and we've been able to do that with a small team. So I would say that success is being able to continue doing that in 2026 and ideally onboard more users and answer more valuable questions with data.
Love it. Thank you, Carl. Bryce, last but not least.
Yeah, I echo what Carl said. As a small team, Octant's funding is really helpful, even if it's a smaller round or a larger round. Like this type of continued and sustained funding gives a lot of promise to the teams to really continue to ship. And I think it's known, like Carl, Toby, and myself, like we've been building these things out of passion because we see a direct need. We've directly chosen not to take the let's go get like globs of money from like some naive VC or something, or like launch some token that's gonna completely fail in like 2 months or 6 months, whatever. And so like building with this type of intentionality requires a lot of focus, and it requires like the capital is really helpful from Octant, but we're gonna ship these things that we know we need to ship. But capital does help us ship faster because we can we have more confidence that we can bring in a vendor, if we need to actually pay for something, for some external support, or like help get extra muscle as needed. But there's also other capital that I think is really helpful, which is, Octant obviously gives a lot of exposure through these like, live streams and stuff. But for all the builders that are out there listening, like capital is really helpful. But what's also really helpful is just using the tools and like providing feedback and contributing. So any sort of like human capital, I think, is what I love to see in 2026 is just more external contributions beyond our small team. And seeing people build unique things. That said, what we're going to be focusing on is building out the developer experience. As I mentioned before, the developer docs, to make them more like kind of ecosystem agnostic friendly, not just like crypto totally forward, but it helps any developer that is very talented coming into the space to understand like, okay, this is the primitive I can use to structure and sign data, and here's like the value of it. So building out the developer docs in that way, we're refreshing the website and the Explorer experience. And so those are kind of the next 2 milestones that we're aiming to check off. If we had extra capital, we'd love to do like more unique things that traditional teams would do, like creating a very nice and simple explainer video around EAS. You don't have to read the developer docs. That sounds pretty trivial, but it's like when I have to make a trade-off decision of like building something from an engineering or product perspective versus like generating a marketing video, it's like it's way it's lower on the list, but it's things that we would love to add on. So yeah, really the capital just gives us optionality and speed to actually do things that we're intending to do. It's just we can do them faster now.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you so much, guys. This has been a super insightful live stream. Love the conversation, and of course, love the products that you're building. I think they're making Ethereum a better place. And yeah, as for our audience here, you've heard of these amazing projects. Please go to Octant.app and make your allocations. We've been hosting these live streams for you to get to know the projects a little bit more, so you make a more informed decision in your allocations. And well, it's very hard, I know. All these projects are literally the best of the best. That's how this round is called. So you might want to allocate to all of them equally or make a decision. Yeah, and also something important, I think now that the X algorithm is changing a lot, please go ahead and spam with likes and comments all these projects, including Octant as well, so that you don't miss any of the updates, because we've been getting messages from people saying that they don't see tweets from us anymore. So I assume it's kind of the same for many of the projects here. So please go ahead and just make sure to like and visit the profiles, give a few likes so that we pop up in your feed a little bit more if you want to stay up to date, of course. And yeah, on Monday, we will also have a special day where we will have all the projects from Epoch 10 together, giving a 5-minute pitch each to showcase all the amazing work that they've been doing. So don't miss that. We're going to have another live stream on Friday. And yeah, don't forget to allocate before time's up. And yeah, once again, thank you to our guests here for coming on, and thank you to the audience for listening in. And thanks to my co-host, Mashal, who had to leave for co-hosting. And I'll see you around. Thanks, everyone.
See you. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.